Hey everyone, I'm Isaac and welcome back to Isaac Reviews 2024. Well, kind of. Today's review is going to be a little different from most if you couldn't tell from the title. While I am still going to discuss my thoughts on a movie that just came out, I also want to highlight its surprisingly troubled production history and why it struggled for so long to come out on the big screen. With that being said, let's talk about Whitebird. Now, Whitebird is a sequel, prequel, and companion piece to the 2017 film Wonder, which itself was adapted from the book of the same name. I read the book and saw the movie, and both were pretty good. Focusing on the movie for a second, sure it was a bit cheesy at times, but it does have a nice message about the importance of kindness, it's faithful to the source material, and it's clear that its heart was in the right place. It even got an Oscar nomination for Best Makeup and Hairstyling, so good for it, I suppose. For a while, however, the author of the book, R.J. Palacio, was adamant that Wonder would just be a one-and-done story without any sequels. She didn't even plan on having there be a movie adaptation at first. But in the years since the book came out, she did write a handful of spin-offs, one of them being Whitebird, a graphic novel semi-focused on Julian, the bully from the first book and movie who's now going to a new school and is trying to turn himself around as a person. He'd eventually talk with Sarah, his grandmother from Paris, who would recount her time in Nazi-occupied France during World War II to show how important kindness is, even in the darkest of times. I read the book a while back and I liked it quite a bit, so I had faith in this movie being good as well. However, despite originally being scheduled to come out in 2022, Lionsgate royally screwed over its release schedule and it wouldn't end up coming out for another 2 years, which I'll talk about later. But for now, let's focus on the movie. I saw it online since it had already been released in a few countries in Europe, and while it wasn't anything special, especially compared to a lot of other films centered around the Holocaust and World War II, it was still a really good movie. The story is basically the same as the book, with not many drastic changes made other than having Sarah actually telling her story in person with Julian rather than via FaceTime, so I can already give it props for being a faithful adaptation. And the writing on its own is pretty good as well, although I do feel like it could have done a better job encapsulating just how horrific the Holocaust was, as I feel like it only really scratches the surface with its subject matter, which just so happens to be one of the darkest periods in human history. Also, while the acting was good, some of the line delivery was a bit flat, which kinda subtracted from the impact of this being a World War II movie. Again, the actors did a good job, especially Helen Mirren, but don't expect anything Oscar-worthy out of them. Other than those minor flaws, Whitebird was a pretty good movie, and one of the more interesting things it did was provide a commentary on Nazi persecution of other groups beyond Jews. Now yes, Sarah herself is Jewish, and she and her family do face a lot of discrimination and bigotry as a result, but the other main character and Sarah's eventual love interest, Julian, is disabled, and he's shown getting bullied even before the Nazis occupy France, mainly by the film's villain, Vincent. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the scenes of Vincent's bullying were pretty hard to watch, but I still appreciate how the film was able to highlight how while Jews were at the forefront of Nazi persecution, there were other groups targeted during the Holocaust that should be remembered all the same. Not to mention, it also does a good job serving as a commentary on how so many young people nowadays would throw their lives away in favor of stuff like the alt-right movement. And it really helps to hit home the message about the importance of kindness, which has always been at the forefront of the Wonder franchise, but it's made even more apparent here with how hard it can be to be selfless in times of hostility and animosity towards people who are different. It's something that we unfortunately continue to see today both at home and abroad, and it's important to recognize the danger of that sort of rhetoric and work to ensure that we never have to repeat something as terrible as what happened all those decades ago. Wow, that got really deep. Let me talk about some of the other stuff Whitebird did well. Yeah, that's a good idea. In addition to being decently well written and effectively emotional, on top of providing some exceptional social commentary, Whitebird also succeeds in terms of filmmaking and production values. The film was directed by Mark Forster, who's worked on a number of dramas in the past, and he did a great job here as well. There was also some lovely cinematography, costumes and sets that do an amazing job reflecting the early 1940s time period, and an excellent score by frequent collaborator Thomas Newman. I can't think of much else I have to say about the movie, so in conclusion, for how royally Lionsgate screwed over its release date, it's really unfortunate since Whitebird was a good movie that, regardless of its quality, did not deserve what it got from the studio. It's not perfect, but it has a poignant message and some effective drama on top of having some great filmmaking behind it. Fans of the first Wonder film are sure to enjoy it, and newcomers might have a good time with it as well. I'm gonna give Whitebird an 8 out of 10, and with that, I can now ask the following question. Why did Lionsgate drop the ball so hard with releasing it? As I mentioned earlier, Whitebird was originally scheduled to come out in October of 2022. I even saw its first trailer before Thor: Love and Thunder, but about a month before it was supposed to come out, Lionsgate pulled it from its release schedule for no given reason with no new release date in sight. It was certainly a baffling decision, especially considering how its original release wasn't facing any major competition besides Black Adam? Plus, this was around the time that movie theaters were really starting to come back into full swing following the pandemic. Eventually, Whitebird got a new release date in August of 2023, but a little over a month before that was supposed to happen, it got delayed again. This time, however, there was an actual reason for the delay: the writers and actors strikes. This would have made it near impossible for the actors to do any promotion for the film, despite Lionsgate being one of the first major studios to reach an interim agreement with the actors that allowed them to promote their upcoming Hunger Games prequel. And in the time between those delays, one of the studios that financed Whitebird, Participant, shut down in mid-2024. On top of that, a new studio was added to the production companies involved with Lionsgate's own Kingdom Story company. Now, Kingdom Story was originally created to produce faith-based films for Lionsgate. One of them was I Still Believe, which I watched in class when I went to a small Christian private school in 8th grade, and it was pretty mediocre if I'm being honest. But I guess ever since then, Kingdom Story has somewhat expanded its reach to where it's not just another Christian movie company like Pureflix, but to where they also produce low-budget drama films on top of faith-based ones. So after all that, Whitebird got its official release date in the US on October 4th, 2024, which was the same day that Joker Folie à Deux was coming out. Not to mention, Lionsgate released the newest film from legendary director Francis Ford Coppola, Megalopolis, only a week prior. It's kind of upsetting because after having their film get delayed for years on end, it feels like Lionsgate decided to give one last middle finger to RJ Palacio, Mark Forster, Mark Baumbach, and the rest of the crew involved by plopping it next to something people are much more likely going to be seeing instead, even if it ended up being critically panned. In fact, the competition it's facing in general is pretty stacked. Not only did The Wild Robot come out the previous week and receive glowing reviews from critics, but there's also a bunch of highly anticipated releases in the coming weeks that'll almost surely leave it in the dust. At this point, it's pretty much guaranteed that Whitebird is going to be a catastrophic bomb at the box office regardless of its quality. They could have just as easily kept it in a month with less traffic, but for reasons I'll never quite understand why, Lionsgate just did not want the public to see this movie. And that is the tragic tale of Whitebird, a film with genuine talent poured into it that was constantly delayed by the studio until it was largely forgotten by general moviegoers, especially when you consider the massive blockbusters it has to compete against. So I hope you enjoyed the change of pace with this episode of Isaac Reviews 2024. If you want to see more videos like this one, then subscribe to the Isaac Carthy channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.